Welcome to this lecture in Accessibility Advanced HTML CSS course. Today's topic is meaningful text. Introduction. Meaningful text is pretty straightforward. When a user reads text or has it announced to them, they should be able to immediately understand what it means, even without any surrounding context. A lack of meaningful text can affect all users, but especially those who rely on assistive technologies. In this lesson, we will be going over a few instances where you should start making sure you provide meaningful text to users. Learning outcomes. Know how to provide meaningful links. Know how to provide meaningful text in forms. Know how to provide meaningful alt attributes for images. Links. Let's take a look at two different examples of a link. Example 1, where it's here. Click here, that is the link to start your career in web development. Example 2, I love that place. Visit the Odin project is the link to start your career in web development. To a sighted user, the link in example 1 makes perfect sense. However, in addition to being able to navigate a page via landmarks and headings, as mentioned in the semantic HTML lesson, a screen reader may be able to navigate between each element of a specific type, such as links. If a user were to navigate between all of the links on a page, the only thing that would get announced in example 1 is click here, link. Where's here exactly? Without any surrounding context, the link is meaningless. Not only that, but if you have multiple links on a page with that same text content, then users will be told to click here many times, which can be confusing for them. The link in example 2, however, not only makes sense in context of all users, but it also makes sense out of context for screen reader users when it gets announced. The Odin project, link. When you add links to a page, there are a few rules you should be following. What are these rules? Make sure that the text content of the A element somehow indicates where the link redirects to and that it's brief, around 100 characters. So avoid using phrases like click here or this page. So these are generic terms, avoid using these. If a link would open or download a file, include text that tells the user what kind of file it is as well as the file size. If a link would automatically open in a new tab or window with the target_blank attribute, you should indicate this to user in some way. Example, now the user is aware that this link will open or download a PDF file because in the href then you are saying 2021 sign up statistics PDF 1 MB. So this will be announced. Example 2, and now the user knows this link opens in a new tab. GitHub in bracket opens in new tab. The next time you need to use links, try saying the contents of the element out loud to yourself. Does it reasonably indicate where that link would take you, such as the title of the page, article, or video? Are you aware whether it will open a new tab automatically or not, or that it will open a download dialog? If you have been testing out using a screen reader up to this point, then an even better way to test whether a link has meaningful text is with the screen reader itself. Forms. Providing meaningful errors to users when they are filling out or submitting a form can turn the experience from frustrating to, well, maybe not fun, but at the very least just a bit less frustrating. Let's take a look at a few error examples ranging from not helpful at all to very helpful. Example 1. So in this input error, invalid input. So you don't know what is the context. Example 2, this makes some sense. What error? Email is invalid. This makes some sense. Even better, in example number 3, we can say error, John Smith at test.com is not valid. Example of a valid email, example at yourdomain.com. So you also provide an example of a correct input. Even if you could tell what input caused the error in example 1, which may not always be the case, the error doesn't provide any meaningful text. What input is invalid? Why is it invalid? How can you fix it? None of these questions are answered. Now imagine how meaningless this error must be to users of assistive technologies, who may not be able to see where an error is rendered on the page and may only have invalid input announced to them. This will not make any sense to them. The error in example 2 clearly tells you that what input is invalid, so you now know exactly where to go. While this might be all a user needs to know, it's worth keeping in mind that it is still a rather vague error. We don't know why our email is invalid. So the error in example 3 is even more meaningful. It not only tells you that input is invalid, but also how to fix the error. Generally, when you inform a user of a form error, you should be informing them what input caused the error and, when possible, how to fix the error or why the error occurred in some way. Another way to provide meaningful text in forms is with instructions, such as when a password input lists any characters that the password must contain, like must include at least one uppercase letter and one number. For instructions that are unique to an input, they should be placed alongside the input itself. Instructions that are more global across the form, such as indicating which inputs are required, should either be placed at the bottom of the form, like star asterisk indicates a required field, or placed alongside the input or its label, like name in bracket required. Alternative text. At this point, you should be pretty familiar with the alt attribute on IMG elements. Whether you are or not, let's see if you can tell which of the following examples is valid. Example 1, image source is something, alt is empty. Example 2, image source and alt is Odin. Believe it or not, both examples, however, are valid. While example 1 does actually have any meaningful text, perhaps a meaningful lack of text, you should still understand its importance. When you are using an image purely for decoration, or the image just isn't really important for the user to be aware of, you generally don't want users of assistive technologies to be made aware of it. In those cases, you should always use an empty string for the value of the alt attribute as seen in the example 1. This is also known as a null value, not to be confused with the JavaScript data type. If you simply omitted the alt attribute, the presence of the image would still be announced, which may confuse the user, especially if the file name was a random string of letters and numbers. So that would be a confusing description of that image. For example 2, the screen reader would announce Odin graphic, making the user aware that there's an image and what it's an image of. What the alternative text should be for an image will ultimately depend on various factors, though. Read alternative text WebAIM, so this is an article on WebAIM, to learn about when and how you should be adding alternative text for images based on the function of the image and the context surrounding it. A knowledge check. What are the 3 rules you should follow in order to provide meaningful links? So what information should you inform users of in order to provide meaningful error messages in forms? When should you use the empty string null value for the alt attribute? Additional resources. Making accessible links, 15 golden rules for developers. It's a little old article. This article is on South SitePoint, but it's still a great list of 15 rules for creating well-accessible links. Some of the rules the article goes over were mentioned in this lesson, but there are some other rules that can help make sure you are creating A11Y friendly links. Usable and accessible form validation and error recovery, this is in WebAIM article, goes over a few different ways you can provide errors to users using the alert in JavaScript, providing all errors at the top of the page, and using inline errors, as well as the pros and cons of each of them. With this, we come to the end of this lesson. We'll move on to the next one.